Hey guys, Jay here. Welcome to Models Memories Weekly, episode 197. Models Memories is a show about nothing and is filmed in front of a live studio audience. This is a show where I talk about my painting, modeling, and wargaming experiences from the week. Now you might be thinking to yourself, Jay, you put out 3 YouTube videos a week. How could I possibly have more to say? Well, I do, and here goes. This week, very minor news, we got a new Demon Primarch for Warhammer 40,000. And speaking of Warhammer 40,000, I started painting my first model of the year. Technically. My year of painting models is kind of split weirdly because we always do a video of every model I've ever painted. And so that technically for me cuts the year in half because that's how my spreadsheet works. I have a spreadsheet of every model that I paint. And so, everything pre-video is 1 year and then everything post-video is another year. And so the first little addition to my spreadsheet is this little guy, my baby Helbrecht. So Helbrecht actually got a points increase, not in the last data slate, but the previous data slate. He's still worth it. He's still really, really powerful. But sometimes you don't quite have like the extra 30 or 40 points. And so I take a lieutenant, and this is a lieutenant. This is actually the Happy Birthday model for Warhammer stores from 2022, I think. I actually missed out on buying this model originally. I was at the store. I was actually in Illinois. And so I was there for the birthday and I'm like, yeah, I actually made it for the store's birthday. I want to buy the model. And he's like, great. So you buy it now and then we ship it and it'll be here in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, I won't be in this state in 2 weeks. And they're like, well, what are you gonna do? So I missed out. But then my local store, every now and then they just have weird stuff and they had the birthday model. And so I managed to get this guy and then I did some fun kit bashing. This is the backpack from, not from Leviathan, from the previous starter set. And I think this was the Chaplain's backpack. And so I bought so many of those Chaplains because on eBay, you could get them for like $10 when the box was fresh. And so I've just been stealing from those Chaplain models forever. And so that's where I got this backpack. The Power Fist is just a closed fist, but I actually kit bashed this little lantern into his hand. And I think it's really, really convincing. It does look like he's pinching the hand or the chain of that lantern. And then I added the sight to the plasma pistol and I added this little chain. I'm very proud of myself. The armband that is around his wrist, that is Milliput. I actually sculpted that and I didn't know the perfect way to do it, but I made a donut out of Milliput and then I wrapped it around his arm. I let it dry and then I just sanded the donut until it was nice and flat. And then I added these little Martha Stewart beads to make the rivets. And I think it's really, really seamless. And then the thing that makes him baby Helbrecht is actually Helbrecht's head. Helbrecht, I think he comes with 2 unhelmeted heads and then 1 helmeted head. I used one of the unhelmeted heads on the model, and so I used the other one here. I can't believe I didn't lose it. In fact, I think it was lost, but just cleaning my desk, every month or so, I have to sweep the Space Marine bits off of my desk, and I just happened to run into the extra Helbrecht head. And perfect timing, I slapped it on this model, and this is baby Helbrecht, the lieutenant. And if I give him the Seal of Sigismund and then the Seal of Sigismund enhancement, and then I spend a CP on him, I can essentially turn him into Helbrecht with all the same rules, attach him to a Sword Brethren squad, and it's like I get lethal or sustained hits on 5s and 6s for the turn I charge. It's breathtaking, the amount of power that this guy can do in games, and he's only 55 points. I mean, he's more with the enhancement, but I really, really like this model. I've been playing with this model. This model was actually in a tournament that I did horribly at, but he performed well. It was just my generalship is what made me not win the game. But I really like how this model is turning out. I decided, because I have a little bit of a bad habit with my Black Templar army, I really want everyone to be unique and exciting, kind of like the famous John Blanche spread of the Black Templar, where they're all, black armored soldiers, but they all have a little something special going on. And so I try to be special, but I end up being special in a really boring way. I put normal Space Marine, Scream helmets onto all of my Blade Guard veteran, but then they all have it. So all of a sudden it's not a unique, special little thing. You actually have to be unique for every single guy. It can't just be a head swap or just be a weapon swap. And so for this guy, I decided to paint his Power Fist red. And I'm very happy with how the red looks. It's very silly and retro, but I like it. I think he will look unique standing with my other Black Templars. I think I have about 2 or 3 hours in this guy, and I probably have another 2 or 3 hours to get him all finished. Another thing I have is a little orc skull on his base, which that is one of Nick's blue orcs. And so it's just a little dig at him that this guy has killed one of his orcs. Yeah, really, really happy with this guy. Black Templar, like the world of Warhammer really got shook up this holiday season because of all of the new data slates. There's a new one for Black Templar. And like my Black Templar Facebook groups are like fighting back and forth on if the new detachment is good or not. I think it is very good, but it requires a lot of finesse because the rules are very specific. Like there's an enhancement to give one unit fights first once during the game. And that's an incredibly powerful ability that if you pull it off at the right moment can be like game changing, but you have to use it in the exact right moment. And so like understanding when is the best moment to utilize that ability can be really powerful. And there's another stratagem where you can make the combat range of one unit 3 inches instead of the normal like 1 inch from a model in base contact. And it's confusingly powerful. That is a really, really good ability, especially when you're Black Templars and you have a 20-man Crusader blob, but it's really tricky to pull off. I want to play some games with it and try to see, because I think there's 2 ways to use it. Either one, you just throw a Crusader squad at something and then you literally throw 100 chainsword attacks, or you like try to multi-charge your opponent's entire army and tie up everything, and you would be able to get every single Crusader to fight. I think those 2 ways would be really, really powerful. If you do the multi-charge though, you're opening yourself up to a lot of reciprocating damage, but it might be worth it. Like if I have one 20-man blob, which is like my anvil, but then I have all my knives set up behind it. So I run in, do a good amount of damage to everything, lock him down for 1 turn as he swings back to attack my Crusaders. And then in my next turn, fall back with like the 3 guys who are still alive and then come in with the rest of my army. It could be, I really like the new detachment. I think it's a lot of fun. It's not dumb fun like the current Righteous Crusade detachment where whole army gets sustained hits 1. That is just good on paper. Kind of hard to play sometimes, but it is just an obviously excellent rule where the new detachment requires a little bit more finesse, but me and my little baby Helbrecht is ready for it. But speaking of being ready for it, one thing I was not ready for this holiday season was Demon Primarch Fulgrim. All year long, my buddy Sean has been like, it's gonna happen. The world eaters, world bearers, emperor's children are coming. And I'm like, I mean, games, they will do it, but it's later. Who knows? It'll probably be like the last thing they do in 10th edition. Nope. Demon Primarch Fulgrim has made his glorious appearance. Kneel before the immaculate form of Fulgrim, Demon Primarch of Slaanesh. He actually looks a lot like the 30k version, but I mean, presumably much, much bigger. What size base is that gonna be? I'm pretty sure, I mean, Morty stands on the 100mm round. I think all of the Demon Primarchs stand on the 100mm round because there's Mortarion, and then there's Angry Ron, and then there's Maggie the Red. And so, and between me and my buddies, we have all of the Demon Primarchs, and they're all really, really big. And so it'll be interesting to see just how big 40k Demon Primarch Fulgrim is. He looks really, really good. I like that he's got the snaky body, but instead of it being a literal snake, it's like that weird seal skin that the Slaanesh Seekers have. It's kind of upsetting. Like you look at his little snaky body and there's like the fat folds, and it's upsetting, but in a good way, because that's how Fulgrim should be. It's really, really nice and really interesting. It makes you wonder about the Demon Primarchs. Like, what is a day in the life of the Demon Primarchs? Because, and this is a question I always had reading like the 30k novels, because, you know, Gilliman and all of these characters are supposedly leading these great crusades, fighting battles across multiple literal planets. But like, he's literally in the midst of a fight. He's fighting 3 guys with his sword. Is he really orchestrating the war that's happening, 3 planets left of Earth? But the Demon Primarchs, it is a little bit more believable because they literally have the power of magic and friendship with the demon powers. But it is fun. Like, I'm just imagining Fulgrim with like a really big chair and a really big TV. And he can't get to the light switch, so he has clappers so that he can operate his spaceship. It's just fun to think about. I mean, I know in reality, they're just sitting in an empty box until they're mentioned in the lore, and then they start existing, and then as soon as they're not mentioned, they go back to not existing. but the Demon Primarchs are a little funny and silly to me, which is what 40k is. The fun of 40k is that it's so beyond real that you kind of just have to go with it, and if you go with it, it becomes really fun. Then you get a snake dude with little tiny wings and a bunch of arms with random weapons that all have backstories. The article has a little tidbit about his sword because I think 2 of his weapons are just like demon weapons, and then 1 of his weapons is his sword, the Silver Blade of the Lair, which is the sword that he carried during the Horus Heresy, and it's all like fancy and sculpted. And then I think for a little while he had the Anathema, which is the sword that got the whole shindig started by pricking Horus that one time and essentially making him turn to chaos. But I think that sword got turned into like little daggers by the World Bearers to do some other chaos shenanigans. And then he's got this new sword, and they're like, this sword is very plain but very powerful, and it was probably given to him by someone really important. And unless it's been explained in the lore, which I just don't remember, this sword might be a new little tidbit of lore. It's obviously a Warhammer 40,000 power sword. Like, it's got the little antennas or wires that are on the outside of the sword like power weapons do. And so I'm sure there is a backstory to this sword, but I'm excited to find out what that lore is. And then in terms of his armor, the Gilded Panoply, it's actually a little bit missing. I mean, I guess like he's wearing armor, but not that much armor. He's got the breastplate, he's got the shoulder pad, the pauldrons. They don't give you a good shot of his back to look at his power plants. I guess his power plant is kind of replaced by the giant wings. But I think the Gilded Panoply, it would have been kind of cool if he was wearing a little bit like segmented, like I guess the armor that a snake would wear, just a bunch of little segments running down his tube body, his little snake body. It does look really good to have the naked snake body. And speaking of naked snake bodies, the only little detail on this guy that I don't know if I'm super jazzed with, or I'm jazzed, but I don't quite like the execution, is in his crotchal area, he's got like a slit cut open, and then the skin is peeled back to make the 8-pointed star. And I feel like I love that idea. I love Hellraiser. It's a great horror movie. I feel like though it doesn't necessarily read well because he got the skin peeled back, but it's peeled back in a perfect oval. And that's not how like stretching things work. Usually you stretch something and it makes a right angle in the spot that's being stretched. And then the skin is pulled back, but instead of just like an awful hook pulling that skin, he's got like these nice little clasps that are holding the flesh back. And so like, did he go to his tailor and is like, okay, so I want the skin like right about here, and could you make me something real nice? He went on Etsy and he got something special ordered for himself. I would like just a big awful hook to be holding back that skin. And then in terms of muscle, that the muscle that the symbol of Slaanesh is sitting on, it does look very much like just an asset, like they had bare flesh asset that they plugged in right there. It doesn't look like muscle. Like when you look at an anatomy drawing of like an animal, there's some spots where the muscle is really knotted and corded, and then there's other spots that are just kind of like fatty and soft. And this is a little bit more fatty and soft, where it probably should be a little bit more sinewy and sculpted. It's a little thing. I think if I got this model, and Sean's definitely gonna buy this model, so I might end up trying to do some kit bashing on this thing just to make, or maybe he'll love it. Maybe he'll love the crotch Chaos Star. But it's the only thing on this model that I'm not in love with. Everything else is really, really nice. He looks great. I think all of his different arms are really, really fun. His pose is excellent. I do think that the hole in his crotch does a really, really good job of kind of cutting his torso in half at the legs. So it looks like him, and then it almost looks like his legs are together, and then they transform into a snake, and it's a really nice way of doing it. I think he's great. I love that his sword ends in one of the little like demonette claws, or his tail ends in one of the demonette claws. His little wings frame him very nicely, and they look like they conform to the parameters of the base well. This is a problem I have with Mortarion and Magnus. They are horrible to play with in game because like you almost have to turn them sideways and then scoot them sideways across the board and then scoot them back because you want your guy facing your opponent, but you have to scooch him a certain way so you can get in between buildings. This guy looks like you wouldn't have as much problems because he actually is filling up the airspace of his base a little bit better. Angron is actually really good where he's posed directly over his base and his wings are kind of tucked in a little bit. Angron is actually a little bit easier to play with, but than Mortarion or Maggie. One thing I am a little bit shocked by is his base is completely plain. He fills up a lot of that base with his coiled up serpent body, but like we got Be'lakor, every Primarch, everyone who's just a little bit tall in Warhammer 40k has a massive sculpted base. This guy doesn't have a massive sculpted base. He's got just a completely plain plastic pancake, and then this guy glued right on top with a little bit of like sand and rocks. I'm surprised they didn't do anything. Like something that could have been cool is like him perched on top of a giant pile of like Primaris Space Marines. That would have been kind of neat. Or just a big pile of something like wrapped around a dreadnought would have been really, really interesting. I mean, I'm not saying like tactical bases are always great because sometimes it's just not what you want, especially like if you're doing something interesting with basing where you're like, my guys are set in the snow. So it doesn't make sense for there to be like a ruined temple. I don't want a ruined temple. I just want it plain. So I guess it is better to have nothing there, but I'm surprised that they don't have anything. Like putting together Mortarion, there is a sculpted base that you can kind of use or you can kind of omit because none of the base, his foot isn't attached to the base. You glue his foot to the piece that is the base. So I used some of the parts for the sculpted base and then I omitted some other ones. So I'm kind of surprised that we don't see a little bit extra going on the base, but it's okay. I think it'll work really, really nicely. I want to see the rest of this army now. I want to see the rest of the Emperor's Children. Like, how close are they going to look to Fulgrim? The thing that I'm looking forward to the most is seeing what is going to be the design philosophy of the Emperor's Children, because Slaanesh is in a weird spot. For Age of Sigmar, they decided Persian. The look of Slaanesh is Persian. But for 40k, we're still kind of in a weird limbo of like, the Demonettes and the Seekers kind of have a look and it's pointy, like, wrought iron chariots. And then for Noise Marines, Games Workshop hasn't made one in 20 years. I mean, there's like the little rock and roller guy, but they're probably not gonna look like that. We've gotten a little bit of teasing with some renderings, and the renderings do look kind of Fulgrim-y. The renderings look a little bit bad, because I think you need to see the model in situ, you need to see it painted, you need to see it physically, like a physical photo of it, as opposed to a rendering to really get the juice of what's going on. So I'm really excited to see what is this army gonna look like? And like, are they going to get the World Eaters treatment of, we're gonna give you 4 kits and one of them is Angron, so you're gonna get 3 kits to make your army out of? Or is it going to be like, we're gonna do it properly. We're gonna crude it up. We're gonna give you 8 units so that you can properly have a brand new army. Because, I mean, obviously we're gonna get Noise Marines. I would assume we're gonna get new Demonettes because the Demonettes are old and relatively unpopular, like just their vibe right now. But other than that, I mean, a Sonic Dreadnought would be amazing. I think you split Noise Marines into 2 different units. Maybe one of them is a little bit more Obliterators, and one of them is a little bit more like just the regular guys with the Sonic rifles. And then, because they're kind of a shooty army. They shoot sound and excess at people. I really want to know, like, what is their playstyle going to be? Because Death Guard are very much slow, ponderous, march towards you, and you can't kill them because of their feel no pains. World Eaters are unga bunga, turn 1 charge. I've played against World Eaters a lot, and it's a fight every single time. Getting turn 1 charged by Angron every single game. And then Angron gets to come back to life. It's so frustrating. I don't even get why Games Workshop did it this way. It's fun. It's fun when Angron comes back to life, but it does mean like you almost automatically lose the game because now your opponent has 400 extra points of their army back from the dead. But they, World Eaters players, every turn they get to roll 8 dice, 8 d6s, and then they can spend those d6s. If they're doubles, they get to do certain things. If they're triples, they get to do certain things. And if you get triple 5s or triple 6s, Angron gets to come back to life. And weirdly, if you have Khorne Berserkers on objectives, you get to re-roll one of your 8 dice. And randomly, it says in the rule book, you may re-roll dice more than once. I think it's the only rule in all of Warhammer 40k that gets to re-roll a dice more than once. It's like page 1 of the core rule says you can only ever re-roll a dice once, but World Eaters get to re-roll dice more than once. And so that, it makes him feel a little bit special and interesting. And so it'll be interesting to see what is up with the Emperor's Children. What is their faction gonna feel like? Because, we've got turn 1 charges, we've got slow and ponderous. Is this gonna be like, because fast and melee, that's still kind of World Eaters. Are they gonna be a little bit more fragile and shooty? I think that's a way. That's a way that they could do it. And then obviously Fulgrim just wants to charge because he doesn't even have a gun. I don't think he ever even had a gun. I mean, I'm sure he had like a bolt pistol in 30K, but it would have been interesting. I mean, he's going to have a ranged weapon the same way that Maggie the Red has like his like Sonic, or not a Sonic. He has like the Shriek of Magnus. No, it's the Scouring Eye of Magnus. The last time I played against Magnus, his Scouring Eye, I think it's like D6 torrent shots. He one-shotted a squad of my Kroots, not the Carnivores, the Kroot Farstalker Kin Band. They got one-shotted by Magnus's all-seeing eye. And so I would assume Fulgrim is going to have a shooting weapon kind of like that, where it's just magic. Take my magic and take a bunch of mortal wounds. Oh, maybe it's just I don't want to see an army that does tons of mortal wounds, because mortal wounds kind of break the game. But that's another way that these guys could be extra fancy and extra special. Maybe this would be way too good, but old school rending claws. Rending was a rule in 6th edition and 7th edition. Maybe it was how rending claws worked in 6th edition specifically, because on a roll of a 6, like a wound roll of a 6, like auto killed a model. That could be a fun way of doing it. You make it super, super limited. Like you have to roll a 6 and then you have to roll another 6, but then the model just automatically dies. There could be something to that, because obviously that works really good against armies like Space Marines, where you're not up against very many models. But then against guard players aren't even going to care. They're gonna be like, oh yeah, you killed 2 Kriegers. They automatically come back in my command phase. So yeah, go for it. Do your unbelievably powerful attack. I would assume we're gonna get some sort of a novel about Fulgrim's return, and I'm very interested to read it to see like how they actually bring him back and what the story is gonna be. It seems like the Primarchs, they had a lot of character development in 30K, and they all kind of grew and changed as people with their own thoughts and philosophies. But the second the last period was done on the Horus Heresy, they've just maintained exactly as they were for 10,000 years. I think it'd be really interesting to see a little bit of character progression on some of these guys. Probably not Fulgrim, he's just a giant snaky boy, but like, Corvus Corax is kind of back in the lore in some spooky ways as like a loyal demon Primarch to the Imperium. Maybe Jagatai Khan, he just chased a bunch of Eldar into the Webway. Maybe he turned to the dark side, but to the Xenos side. Maybe he's like, you know what? Well, he probably would not be like, the Dark Eldar, I've got something good going, because they don't. The Dark Eldar are doomed and it's horrible only. But it would be interesting to see some Primarchs change. There's a hilarious fan art of Jagatai, because he chased the Dark Eldar into the Webway. He's just been chilling with the Dark Eldar, just living his life. Just being an absolute bro. It's a beautiful piece of art. You know what? That's what I want for him. I want him to just live his life and to enjoy himself, because why? Why keep fighting for the Imperium or for Chaos or for anything? What's the point of any of this? If he can just live a nice, simple life somewhere in the ethereal Webway, maybe that's for the best. Ooh, and what are their names? There's one of the Primarchs is actually 2 Primarchs. Alfarius and Omegon, they're both dead, canonically. But are they really? Like, if we don't have their corpse, they're alive. Even though they're both definitely dead. But, in 40, they're not really dead. I would love to see them return, and I would love to see them return on the loyal side. Because, it's all going according to plan, and they're the tricksters that no one has ever really known what they want or where their allegiances lie. And so they did side with the bad guys, with Horus. But maybe for 10,000 years, they've just been doing some stuff. I also like to think that maybe because they killed Rogel Dorn, maybe they didn't kill Rogel Dorn because they only found his hand. So maybe one of them they either cut off Rogel Dorn's hand and like used that to fake his death, or they cut off one of their own hands because nobody really knows what they look like. One of them has a hand that matches Dorn pretty well, and so they gave that to the Imperium to sneakily like keep him safe or keep him captive for the last 10,000 years. I think there's a lot of really fun stuff that you could do with the Primarchs. There's a few that are very, very dead. Sanguinius is dead. they could there's magic. You could always do something like bring him back to life through warp shenanigans, and his soul is still alive, even though his body is very, very dead. But I'm excited for the Primarchs coming back. Almost as excited as I am to tell you about our website. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find our new merch, like the new Nick and J dice in orange and blue. The Orc blue ones aren't as cool as the Necron J orange ones, in my opinion. And our website is the best way to support us doing what we do with a membership. Each month, members will get 1 credit that they can use on our new terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. For the month of December, we made The Fall, Part 1, Buildings, the easiest way to get a ton of terrain really fast. This set focuses on printable decorations for cardboard, foam core, or Pringles cans buildings. Build out a grimdark militarized fort dripping with details, with a selection of sandbag-laden battlements, barbed wire defenses, armored wall decorations, and noble eagle lookout posts. This set allows for large terrain to be built in record time, and it has printable textures to add detail and decoration to take this terrain to the next level. This is the first of 3 releases that focus on getting a proper 40k board up and running as easily as possible. It's going to be an exciting year of Warhammer 40k with at least one new faction coming to the universe. It is a Chaos faction, and it is, I really want to know what Games Workshop is going to do with Slaanesh. What is the look going to be? I would bet, I'm going to put my money on, they kind of refresh all of Slaanesh, and they just try again, and they're going to be like, this is what Slaanesh is now. Because currently, there really isn't anything. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the Demon Primarch Fulgrim's return? What Primarchs would you like to see come back? Probably one of the really dead ones, because that would just be really interesting to see how they retcon them back to life. Sanguinius' return would be really cool. Sanguinius could be a new emperor. Sanguinius was remarkably powerful and beloved, and honestly a pretty good guy. Like we got Guilliman, but Guilliman is lame and boring and normal. I want to see Sanguinius return, because I actually feel like that could fix everything.